If you sat down today to read a complex textbook or, I don't know, a dense technical manual for 14 hours straight, your brain wouldn't just stop learning at hour 11.
No, it wouldn't.
It would actively begin deleting the information you learned in hour 1.
Right.
You are literally biologically cannibalizing your own intelligence. And the terrifying part is you are doing this at the exact moment in human history when your cognitive output is the absolute only thing protecting you from total economic obsolescence.
It is a recipe for disaster.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are not talking about, getting slightly better grades or tweaking your morning routine with some generic productivity hacks.
We're way past that.
Exactly. We are talking about the fact that up to 38% of graduates from elite global engineering institutions, places that, 5 years ago were considered absolute golden tickets to lifelong financial security.
Yeah.
They are currently sitting without placements.
Entirely unplaced.
They are completely unplaced in a global economy that is just shifting way faster than any traditional curriculum can even adapt to.
And, that economic restructuring is happening simultaneously with what I would call a severe biological crisis.
Right.
Because when you look at the raw data surrounding cognitive performance over the last 2 decades, the metrics are, well, they're genuinely alarming. Human attention spans have plummeted by up to 70% in specific demographics.
70%. That is just staggering.
It is. So we are trying to navigate what is arguably the most complex AI-disrupted job market since the Industrial Revolution, and we are trying to do it with cognitive machinery that has been severely structurally degraded.
Yeah.
And the structural forces behind this issue, they are fundamentally changing who holds power, who makes the money, and honestly, who gets permanently left behind.
Exactly. The stakes here are just immense. This is a survival guide for the modern economy. For you listening right now, the learner, the person who refuses to be left behind by this massive macroeconomic pivot, our mission today is to deconstruct exactly what is happening under the hood of your own brain.
Yes.
And more importantly, how to adapt before you risk total irrelevance. Because the people who are going to benefit from this global shift are the ones who understand how to weaponize their focus.
Absolutely. And the losers are the ones clinging to that outdated script, the idea that simply grinding away at rote memorization and securing a traditional degree is somehow going to be enough.
Which is wild because the old script is totally dead.
It's completely dead. The entire concept of value in the marketplace has been inverted. But before we can even begin to talk about the high-paying skills of the 2026 economic landscape, we have to address the biological hardware first.
Right, the brain itself.
Yeah. We have to understand why the traditional methods of learning are failing so spectacularly right now.
Okay, so let's unpack this core problem first, because it's fascinating to me. Why is traditional studying like the kind of repetitive data storage we've all been taught to do since, elementary school? Why is that failing right now? And what exactly separates a top-tier cognitive performer from everyone else who's just out there burning themselves out?
The fundamental misunderstanding most people have about learning, especially in highly complex, abstract fields, so think advanced mathematics, quantum physics, deep-level computer science, is that they treat the human brain like a hard drive.
It's like just a blank storage disk?
Exactly. They treat learning as an exercise in raw data storage. Just pack it in. But elite cognitive performance isn't about memorizing isolated facts. It is entirely about pattern recognition.
Pattern recognition.
Yes. Let's look at advanced physics, for instance. There are actually very few pure isolated facts that you just have to blindly remember.
Right.
Instead, there are underlying structural patterns to decode. When you understand the core conceptual pattern, you don't need to memorize the formulas because you can derive the formulas yourself.
Oh, wow. So you just build it on the fly.
Exactly. You look at examples, you practice the application, and when you are faced with an entirely new, unseen variable on a test or in a job, your brain isn't frantically searching a mental database for a memorized answer.
Because the answer isn't in the database.
Right. It is rapidly scanning all the previous structural frameworks you've built. It decodes the new problem, and it applies the pattern.
It's the difference between trying to memorize every possible turn and street name to navigate a massive city versus just understanding how to read a map and knowing where north is.
That's a great analogy.
Right. If a road is closed, the person who memorized the route is completely paralyzed. They're done.
Yeah, they panic.
But the person who understands the map just calculates a new route instantly.
Precisely. And the biological reality of how the brain learns completely supports this map-building approach. Your brain acquires new information by attaching it to an existing neurological framework.
Okay.
It requires scaffolding. When a new piece of data enters your brain, your neurons are physically looking for an existing network to latch onto.
You need something to grab.
Exactly. This is why reading foundational material, say, like a basic high school primer on a subject before you even attempt to tackle a complex university lecture or a dense research paper, is absolutely critical.
Right.
The data shows that this pre-reading approach makes cognitive absorption 2 to 3 times more effective.
2 to 3 times?
Yeah.
Just from pre-reading?
Yes, because you are building the scaffolding first.
Think of it like building a house.
Yeah.
You can't just order the delivery of premium drywall and expensive windows if you haven't poured the concrete foundation and put up the wooden framing first.
Right, the windows would just fall over.
Exactly. When a lecturer or a dense text introduces a highly complex concept, if your neural pathways already have a basic scaffolding in place, that new data attaches instantly.
It slots right in. And without that pre-existing structure, the new information literally has nowhere to go.
It just bounces off.
It just floats in your short-term working memory for a few minutes and then, poof, dissipates entirely.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Even if you deeply understand pattern recognition and scaffolding, there are still domains. I mean, whether you're studying for the bar exam, medical boards, or learning a new language for global business, that simply require massive, unavoidable amounts of raw data retention.
Sure, rote memorization is sometimes unavoidable.
Right. But there is a biological hack for this, right? Because humans are fundamentally visual creatures. We aren't wired to read text. I mean, text is a very recent human invention, evolutionarily speaking.
We are incredibly visual. To put it in perspective for you, human beings process images up to 60,000 times faster than text.
60,000 times. That's insane.
It takes the human visual cortex a mere 13 milliseconds to process an entire image. 13 milliseconds.
Wow.
Text, on the other hand, requires your brain to decode abstract symbols, translate them into sounds, string those sounds into words, and then derive meaning from those words.
It's a whole process.
It's incredibly computationally expensive for the brain. Elite learners understand this biological bias, and they exploit it to bypass the bottleneck of rote memorization.
Right.
They use spatial and visual techniques, the most famous being the memory castle or the method of loci, which actually dates all the way back to ancient Greece.
Okay, I want to break this down for the learner right now, because I know it sounds like a parlor trick, but it's actually grounded in hard evolutionary neuroscience.
It really is.
If you need to remember a complex, random sequence of data, let's say you were trying to memorize the global supply chain logistics of semiconductor manufacturing, right? From silicon extraction to Taiwan fabrication plants to European lithography machines.
Yeah.
You don't just read the list over and over. You construct a vivid, ridiculously absurd visual narrative.
Right. The absurdity is the key mechanism here. The human brain is evolutionarily wired to remember things that are dangerous, novel, or wildly out of the ordinary.
Because that information used to be vital for our survival in the wild.
Exactly. If you see a generic tree, your brain discards it. It's not important. But if you see a tree on fire, your amygdala tags that memory with immense emotional weight, and it moves instantly into long-term storage.
So to use that semiconductor example, you wouldn't just try to memorize the term lithography.
No. You would visualize your own living room. You know your living room perfectly. Sitting on your couch is a giant glowing laser beam representing the lithography machine. And it's slicing a massive sparkling silicon wafer like it's a pizza.
Okay, I see it.
And maybe Elon Musk is sitting there eating a slice of the silicon pizza.
That is deeply weird.
It is deeply weird, but that's exactly why it works. It works because you are hacking your brain's spatial memory system, the hippocampus, which evolved to remember the layout of physical environments so our ancestors could find their way home.
Right.
You map abstract, boring data onto physical, highly visual, emotionally strange narratives in an environment you already know perfectly, like your house. Your brain latches onto it instantly.
That is incredible.
But, and this is a crucial caveat here, even with these advanced techniques, there is a hard biological limit.
Right, the brain isn't magic.
No, the human brain is a physical organ. It runs on glucose, and it requires biological maintenance. If you map out a graph of study time versus cognitive performance, peak output actually plateaus between 7 to 11 hours of focused work per day.
Okay, wait, let me stop you there. Because 7 to 11 hours is a wide range, but let's take the absolute maximum. 11 hours, what happens at hour 12?
Biological decay.
Biological decay.
Yes. To consistently push focused cognitive work past 11 hours, you have to start compromising on fundamental biological needs.
Like sleep.
You have to sacrifice sleep, you have to compromise on nutrition, and you completely eliminate physical movement. When you do that, the physical performance of the brain actively and measurably declines.
Wow.
You aren't just getting a lower return on your time investment, you are actively damaging your brain's ability to retain the information you just spent the last 11 hours studying.
So pushing the brain for 16 hours isn't just like running the battery down. It's like trying to upgrade your computer's hard drive while simultaneously pouring battery acid on the motherboard.
That's a brutal way to put it, but yes.
Which makes me push back on a massive global phenomenon. If the science is so incredibly clear that peak performance hard caps at 11 hours and absolutely requires sleep and physical health to encode memories, why do massive education systems, particularly in hyper-competitive emerging markets, actively push students to study 14 to 16 hours a day? We see these massive pressure cooker educational hubs where teenagers are essentially locked in rooms for years just doing rote memorization.
It is a profound structural failure, and it stems from a fundamental misunderstanding of human biology by the institutions themselves.
They just ignore the science.
They apply industrial-era factory logic, where more hours on the assembly line equals more products to cognitive work. And cognitive work is governed by biological limits.
Right.
When we look at the reality of those environments, the statistics are just tragic. In a normal, healthy population, the baseline rate for clinical depression is roughly 7.5%. But in these hyper-competitive, high-pressure exam hubs, the data suggests that up to 80% of students suffer from severe chronic anxiety.
80%.
Yes. And a full 40% are experiencing clinical depression. We are seeing teenagers buckling under an impossible system, leading to skyrocketing burnout rates, severe substance abuse, with significant percentages turning to stimulants and narcotics just to cope with the hours and tragically high suicide rates.
It is absolutely heartbreaking. And for anyone listening right now, if you've ever felt this kind of crushing institutional burnout, you know exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Actually, for you, the learner, if you've experienced this kind of systemic pressure to just grind yourself into the dirt, drop a comment on this deep dive. Let's get a real conversation going about this in the comments, because it's a silent epidemic.
It really is.
And please, like the deep dive, if you appreciate this unfiltered look at the reality of cognitive science. It really helps us keep bringing you these deep analyses. But I want to dig into the exact biology of that failure for a second. What exactly is happening inside the brain of a 19-year-old under that much sustained 16-hour-a-day pressure?
It comes down to the neurobiology of chronic stress.
Okay.
When a human being is subjected to a relentless, high-pressure environment, worrying constantly about batch rankings, facing daily high-stakes testing, completely separated from their familial support systems, and chronically sleep-deprived, their body enters a permanent state of fight or flight.
So the brain thinks it's being chased by a lion.
Literally, yes.
Right.
The brain perceives this environment as a physical threat to survival. This triggers the adrenal glands to release massive continuous waves of the stress hormone cortisol.
Cortisol.
Now, in short bursts, cortisol is helpful. It wakes you up, it sharps your focus to escape a predator.
Yeah.
But chronic, sustained cortisol exposure is highly toxic to neural tissue.
Toxic.
Highly toxic. And here's the profound, tragic irony of these education systems. Cortisol actively attacks and degrades the hippocampus.
And the hippocampus is the exact center of the brain responsible for spatial memory and learning. It's the exact hardware they need to pass the test.
Exactly. The very institutional system designed to forge elite academic performers is biologically destroying the specific part of the brain required to retain information.
That is wild.
The extreme stress physically shrinks the dendritic networks in the hippocampus. It impairs their executive function, their ability to make complex decisions, and critically, their ability to encode new memories.
Wow.
So those 14 to 16-hour study days aren't just inefficient, they are scientifically counterproductive. They are actively erasing the student's potential.
That is a brutal reality check. It completely dismantles the whole hustle culture myth that more hours automatically equal more success.
It does.
Which brings us to a much sharper question. Knowing how the brain works, and knowing that we shouldn't just mindlessly grind for 16 hours is fundamentally useless if you can't focus for the 4 to 6 hours you actually do have.
That's the real challenge.
Right. We are operating in a modern digital environment where the apps, the notifications, and the algorithms are engineered by thousands of the smartest behavioral psychologists on Earth, specifically to hijack your attention.
Yes, they are.
How does the learner build structural defensive discipline against that?
This is the pivot that separates the amateurs from the elite. You have to pivot from relying on motivation to building ironclad systems.
Motivation versus systems.
Motivation is an emotion. It is inherently unreliable. It evaporates the moment a task gets difficult or boring. Systems, on the other hand, are structural. They dictate behavior regardless of how you feel.
Right.
To understand how to build a system for focus, you first have to understand the biological entry fee for the zone, or what psychologists formally call the flow state.
Flow state.
Flow is a state of deep cognitive immersion where your brain waves shift into the alpha-theta border and your perception of time distorts. But it isn't instantaneous. It takes the average human brain 15 to 20 minutes of completely uninterrupted focus just to enter this state.
Let me emphasize that for a second. 15 to 20 minutes of uninterrupted focus.
Uninterrupted.
That means if you are sitting at your desk trying to do deep work, but you glance at your phone or check an email notification every 12 minutes, you are literally resetting the biological clock.
You are.
You will never reach peak cognitive capacity, ever.
Never. You are perpetually stuck in the shallow end of your cognitive pool, expending massive amounts of energy just trying to transition between tasks, which is neurologically exhausting.
So this actually challenges the old popular advice of the Pomodoro technique, right?
Yes, it does.
The idea of working for 25 minutes and then taking a 5-minute break. If it takes 20 minutes just to enter flow, a 25-minute timer means you're stopping right as your brain finally boots up.
Exactly. For shallow work like answering emails or doing basic admin tasks, the Pomodoro technique is fine, but for elite, complex cognitive output, it is entirely insufficient.
You need longer blocks.
To achieve real leverage, you need to upgrade to what researchers call ultradian sprints. The human body operates on biological rhythms throughout the day called ultradian rhythms.
Oh.
Instead of short bursts, you structure your deep work into 90-minute blocks. You completely isolate yourself, remove all digital inputs, and push your brain to its maximum capacity for an hour and a half.
90 minutes.
That aligns perfectly with the natural cycle of human alertness. And then, crucially, you take a meaningful restorative break to allow your neural networks to consolidate what you just did.
Right.
And when the inevitable midday energy dip hits, usually around 2 or 3 p.m., elite performers don't just push through it with brute force. They use a highly specific biological protocol known as the Nappuccino.
Okay, the Nappuccino. I absolutely love this concept, but I have to play the skeptic here for a second.
All right.
The protocol suggests drinking caffeine and then immediately taking exactly a 25-minute nap. Wait, 25 minutes. Every time I nap for 25 minutes, I wake up feeling like I've been hit by a truck.
That's a very common experience.
Why that specific timing? Are you sure that's right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's break down the exact neurobiology of this.
It's common to wake up groggy, which is called sleep inertia, but that usually happens when you sleep for 45 minutes to an hour because you enter slow wave, deep sleep, and waking up in the middle of that cycle is jarring.
Right.
The 20 to 25-minute cap is mathematically precise to prevent you from entering that deep sleep phase. But the real magic of the Nappuccino is the chemical interplay between adenosine and caffeine.
Adenosine.
Yes. Throughout your waking day, as your neurons fire, they produce a metabolic byproduct called adenosine. Think of adenosine like cellular exhaust fumes.
Exhaust fumes from your brain working.
Exactly. As the day goes on, this exhaust builds up, binds to specific receptors in your brain, and creates what we call sleep pressure. It makes you lethargic and foggy.
So sleep is the biological process of sweeping out those exhaust fumes.
Exactly. When you sleep, your brain clears out the adenosine. Now, caffeine doesn't actually give you energy. Caffeine is a master of molecular mimicry.
Mimicry.
It is shaped exactly like adenosine, so it plugs into those exact same receptors, blocking the exhaust fumes from attaching.
Wow.
But, and here's the crucial timing mechanism, when you drink a cup of coffee, it takes about 20 to 25 minutes for the caffeine to be digested, enter your bloodstream, cross the blood-brain barrier, and reach those receptors.
This is brilliant. So, by drinking the coffee and immediately lying down for a 25-minute power nap, you are naturally clearing the adenosine exhaust from the receptors through sleep.
Right.
And just as the receptors are wiped clean, the massive wave of caffeine arrives to lock them down.
Precisely. You wake up with a completely clear biological slate and a massive surge of artificial energy. It is essentially a biological reboot for your brain.
That is an amazing hack.
Paired with that is another structural system called the Double 4 protocol. This involves structuring your day by executing 40 minutes of intense, highly focused work immediately upon waking up and another 40 minutes of intense work right before sleep.
It bookends your day with deep productivity.
It does.
And what I find so powerful about the Double 4 protocol is that it completely bypasses the friction of choice. Decision fatigue is real.
Very real.
If you wake up and have to decide what to do, you've already lost.
Yeah.
The system dictates that the first 40 minutes are already claimed by deep work before your brain even has a chance to negotiate.
Yes. But to make any of this work, the ultradian sprints, the nappuccinos, the Double 4, we have to look at attention as a physical muscle.
Right.
And right now, for most people, that muscle has been severely atrophied by the digital environment.
Completely.
Every single time you open a screen, it's an assault on your focus. The environment always wins over willpower. If your phone is on your desk, even if it's face down and on silent, studies show your brain is still expending a portion of its cognitive bandwidth, just actively resisting the urge to check it.
Just knowing it's there drains you.
Exactly. The physical distance matters. You have to leave the phone in an entirely different room while you work.
And that physical distance ties directly into this concept of dopamine loading, which I think is one of those critical concepts for the learner to grasp right now. Because we aren't just fighting distraction, we are fighting addiction.
We are. The modern human brain is profoundly addicted to cheap, unearned dopamine.
Earned.
Yes. Evolution designed dopamine not as a reward, but as a motivation chemical. It drives you to hunt, to forage, to do difficult things to survive.
Right.
But scrolling short-form videos, checking notifications, or eating highly processed sugar provides massive spikes of dopamine with absolutely zero effort.
It's just free hits.
If you consume that cheap dopamine first thing in the morning, say, by reaching for your phone the second you open your eyes, your neurochemical baseline is completely ruined for the rest of the day.
Because you've spiked your dopamine levels so high so fast that normal complex tasks like reading a report or writing a proposal suddenly feel physically impossible.
They pale in comparison.
They just don't provide that instant hit, so your brain rejects them. Dopamine loading is the defensive strategy against this.
Right.
It requires you to force yourself to complete your vital, difficult tasks before you allow yourself any cheap digital dopamine. You have to earn it. You use the cheap dopamine as a strategic reward at the end of the day rather than the baseline at the start.
And it's not just digital inputs affecting this neurochemical balance, it's physical inputs too.
Food.
The biological fuel we provide the system dictates our cognitive output. The data heavily emphasizes the necessity of a high-protein, low-carbohydrate diet, particularly in the morning.
Okay, why the morning specifically?
Because heavy carbohydrates like cereals or pastries cause a massive, rapid spike in blood glucose. Your pancreas responds by flooding your system with insulin to clear the sugar, which leads to a sharp crash.
The infamous sugar crash.
That crash manifests neurologically as severe brain fog, lethargy, and a complete inability to focus.
Which is exactly when most people reach for more cheap dopamine to feel better. It's a vicious cycle.
Exactly. Conversely, a high-protein breakfast provides a slow, steady release of energy. More importantly, protein provides essential amino acids like tyrosine, which are the literal biological precursors to dopamine and adrenaline.
So you're building the chemicals from scratch.
You are giving your brain the raw materials it needs to maintain sharp, sustained focus.
So we optimize the digital environment, we optimize the biological fuel, but what about the people around us? Because an environment isn't just screens and food, it's social infrastructure.
Sure.
And this is where it gets highly practical for anyone trying to build a career.
Social leverage is arguably the most powerful behavioral hack of all because humans are deeply fundamentally social creatures.
Right.
We are biologically wired to honor social contracts to avoid being ostracized from the tribe. The data is definitive on this.
Huh?
Having an accountability buddy, someone you explicitly share your goals with, and ideally someone you work alongside in a shared space, even virtually increases your chances of task consistency by an astonishing 65 to 95%.
95%. That's almost a guarantee.
When you make a commitment to another human being, the friction of letting them down is often stronger than the friction of doing the work.
But the reverse is also true, right? If you surround yourself with what we call energy suckers, people who are inherently negative, unmotivated, chronically complaining, or constantly distracting you, failure is practically guaranteed.
Oh, absolutely.
You have to ruthlessly curate your social infrastructure. If your circle is constantly pulling you toward cheap dopamine, you will eventually cave.
Yes, you will cave because willpower is a finite resource. You cannot out-willpower a toxic social environment forever.
Okay, let me pause here because I can hear the learner thinking this right now. We're talking about mapping out our sleep cycles, hacking our adenosine receptors, isolating our phones in other rooms, eating specific amino acids for dopamine production, and ruthlessly cutting out friends who distract us.
It sounds intense.
Are we just turning ourselves into emotionless productivity machines? Are we optimizing the actual joy out of human existence just to squeeze out a few more drops of economic output?
It's a very valid philosophical fear, but the reality of mastering these systems is actually the exact opposite.
How so?
The goal of building ironclad productivity systems isn't to turn you into a machine that works 16 hours a day. We already established that destroys the brain.
Right.
The goal is ultimate efficiency and leverage. By mastering these protocols, you drastically, radically condense the amount of time required to get your work done.
Because you are operating at peak flow rather than fractured attention.
Exactly. Consider the average office worker. They might spend 8 hours at a desk, but because they are constantly interrupted, constantly checking notifications, and constantly battling brain fog, they might only produce 2 hours of actual valuable cognitive output.
So they're just sitting there stressed.
The task gets dragged out, and they spend the entire day feeling a low-grade chronic anxiety. If you master ultradian sprints and dopamine loading, you can finish that same task in 3 hours of deep, uninterrupted work.
That makes total sense.
That mastery opens up the other 5 hours of your day. It buys back your freedom. It allows you to actually enjoy your life, spend time with your family, or pursue a hobby entirely free from the lingering toxic guilt of procrastination.
Wow.
Systematizing your work is what actually buys back your humanity.
That is a massive paradigm shift. You don't optimize to work more, you optimize to work less, but with exponentially higher impact.
Precisely.
So let's tie these two phases together. We've deconstructed the biological mechanisms of elite learning. We know how to protect the hippocampus. We know how to build unbreakable productivity systems to defend our focus against algorithms.
We have the cognitive tools sharpened to a razor's edge.
But where do we apply them?
This is the critical juncture.
Because this brings us to the massive, sweeping macroeconomic pivot that we mentioned at the very beginning of the deep dive. We are looking at a global economy where traditional white-collar jobs, the safe corporate roles, are facing massive layoffs.
Massive.
Even the absolute holy grail of the last 2 decades, entry-level computer science and programming, is losing its shine. Why? Because the underlying mechanics of value have changed.
They have completely flipped.
So if we have these elite cognitive tools, what is the market actually paying for in 2026?
The restructuring of economic value happening right now is profound, and it is entirely driven by the rapid maturation of artificial intelligence. To understand where the money is flowing, you have to understand what AI has commoditized.
Okay.
For the last 20 years, the ability to write code to understand complex syntax like Python or C++ was highly scarce. Because it was scarce, it was incredibly valuable.
Right, it was the ultimate skill.
But today, massive tech executives are openly predicting a near future where the vast majority of developers won't write a single line of code themselves, because AI models can now handle back-end generation, write boilerplate code, and debug at lightning speed.
I heard a quote recently that perfectly encapsulates this. English is the new coding language.
It is. The premium on pure syntax knowledge is dropping towards zero because the marginal cost of generating code has dropped to zero.
So what is scarce?
What is incredibly scarce right now, and therefore incredibly valuable, is human communication, systems thinking, and storytelling. It's the ability to act as the architect.
The architect, not the bricklayer.
Exactly. The new premium is on prompt engineering, knowing exactly what complex problem to ask the AI to solve, structuring the parameters logically, and using the AI as an execution engine rather than a tool you have to manually operate.
The arbitrage in digital skills right now is fascinating, and it's happening on a global scale. We're seeing a stark cross-industry comparison that completely flips the traditional hierarchy of valuable skills. Right now, in many major tech hubs, you have entry-level software engineers entering a saturated market and making roughly the baseline median salary. Meanwhile, highly skilled video editors, AI prompt engineers or specialized copywriters roles that were previously considered soft or creative are commanding 2 to 3 times that baseline salary.
It flips the hierarchy because, as we said, code is no longer the bottleneck. Distribution and attention are the bottlenecks.
I didn't see.
Every company in the world has the tools to build a product now, thanks to AI. The friction isn't building the app. The friction is getting anyone to care that the app exists.
Because the market is flooded.
Code is abundant. Human attention is fiercely, ruthlessly scarce. And to understand how to capitalize on that scarcity, we need to look at a sequence of wealth building called the 5 buckets framework.
Let's break this down because this framework explains why so many incredibly smart people fail to monetize their skills. The sequence is knowledge, skills, network, resources, and reputation.
Right.
Most people fail because they try to hack the sequence.
They do. They try to jump straight to the 4th bucket, resources. They want the venture capital funding. They want the high-paying salary. They want the massive audience, but they haven't filled the preceding buckets.
Let me give an example of this to really ground it for the learner. Imagine a young, ambitious person who wants to launch an AI startup. They spend all their time going to networking events, handing out business cards, and pitching investors.
Classic mistake.
They're trying to build a network and acquire resources, but they haven't actually spent the hundreds of hours required in the first 2 buckets, knowledge and skills.
Exactly.
They don't actually know how the underlying AI models work, and they don't possess the specific skill to integrate APIs into a unique product. Because the first 2 buckets are empty, the investors see right through them. The network collapses, and the resources never come.
You cannot bypass the sequence. You must acquire deep, specialized knowledge. You then apply that knowledge repeatedly until it becomes a highly tangible skill.
Right.
Once you have a valuable skill, you use it to solve problems for other people, which naturally builds your network. That network, recognizing your value, provides you with resources, capital, job offers, partnerships.
It flows naturally.
And over time, the consistent compounding of all 4 builds your reputation, which is the ultimate leverage because opportunities start coming to you passively.
So if attention is the new global currency, if it is the digital real estate of the 2026 economy, what specific skills should the learner be putting into that second bucket right now? Let's do a deep dive into the exact high-paying roles that are thriving in this post-AI landscape.
The first major opportunity is in AI storytelling and video generation. We are witnessing a massive reallocation of capital.
From who?
Brands from massive legacy global corporations to agile e-commerce startups are shifting their marketing budgets away from traditional, highly expensive commercial shoots.
Right, those cost a fortune.
They no longer want to pay a 40-person production crew to fly to a location, shoot for 3 days, and spend a month in post-production. They are moving rapidly towards AI-generated, hyper-targeted, short-form content.
And the people executing these campaigns aren't traditional Hollywood directors or traditional videographers.
No, they are hybrid creators, individuals who have mastered the stack of new generative AI tools. They are using tools like Midjourney for storyboarding, 11 Labs for hyper-realistic voice cloning and localization, and Heijen to create highly realistic digital avatars that can speak directly to the camera in 30 different languages.
It's wild.
They use Flux AI or Runway to generate B-roll footage from text prompts.
Let's pause and explain the gravity of that. One single person sitting in their bedroom with a laptop can use 11 Labs to clone a brand ambassador's voice, translate a script into Mandarin, Spanish, and German perfectly, and use Heijen to make the digital avatar's lips sync perfectly to those languages.
It's unbelievable leverage.
They are doing the work of an entire localization agency in an afternoon.
And because they are solving a massive friction point for businesses, dramatically lowering the cost of customer acquisition while increasing the speed of testing new ads, they can charge absolute premium rates.
Of course they can.
They might charge a company thousands of dollars for a campaign that took them 3 hours to generate. It's ultimate leverage.
The second massive opportunity is ghostwriting, but specifically optimized for professional distribution platforms like LinkedIn or X.
This is huge right now.
We are seeing founders, CEOs, and venture capitalists who possess deep industry knowledge and massive budgets, but they have absolutely zero time to write, and more importantly, they don't understand the psychology of the algorithm.
Personal branding for executives is no longer a vanity metric. It is a critical business necessity for lead generation, securing funding, and attracting top-tier talent.
People don't follow faceless corporate logos anymore.
Exactly, they follow people. Ghostwriters are stepping into this gap, and they are commanding premium retainers, often thousands of dollars a month per client. But it is vital to understand that this is not just writing nicely. It's not poetry.
If you just write a polite, grammatically correct paragraph, it will get zero engagement. Elite ghostwriting is the engineering of human psychology. It requires a deep understanding of structural mechanics.
Let's deconstruct that psychology. You can't just list hook, content, conclusion like a high school essay. That's what amateurs do.
Right.
Elite ghostwriters understand the dopamine expectation circuit. When they write a hook, they aren't just summarizing the post. They are creating a psychological knowledge gap.
A gap that has to be closed.
Exactly. A bad hook is, here are 5 tips for leadership. A neurologically optimized hook is, I spent $50,000 studying leadership under a Fortune 500 CEO. Within 30 days, I realized his most profitable habit was incredibly toxic. Here is what I learned.
Right. The optimized hook creates cognitive dissonance. The brain demands resolution, so the user clicks read more.
They literally can't help it.
And the mechanics continue into the content itself. Elite writers use the Zeigarnik effect, the psychological principle that people remember uncompleted or interrupted tasks better than completed ones. So they leave you hanging.
They will end a paragraph with a cliffhanger sentence. They utilize data not just to state facts, but to sell a feeling of authority or urgency. Every single sentence is ruthlessly engineered to earn the reader's attention for the next sentence.
And then there is a fascinating hidden micro-industry that completely surprised me when I was analyzing the economic trends. It's a role called the podcast closer, or the creator booking agent.
It's a brilliant manifestation of finding a niche friction point. As the podcast industry and long-form YouTube interviews explode globally, growing creators face a massive bottleneck. Yes, they desperately need high-profile, authoritative guests to increase their credibility and reach new audiences. But as a solo creator, they don't have the time to send hundreds of customized emails, and they don't have the network to bypass gatekeepers.
So a podcast closer steps in and acts essentially as a high-end B2B sales agent, but for human attention. They research the exact guests who are promoting a new book or a new product launch. They craft neurologically optimized pitch emails. They handle the scheduling logistics. And for every successful booking they secure for the creator, they take a significant commission.
It's pure value creation.
They turn cold outreach into a highly lucrative, scalable side business. And they don't even have to create any content themselves.
So if we pull back and look at the macro picture, what is the common thread connecting the AI video creator, the executive ghostwriter, and the podcast closer?
Friction.
Yes. The massive financial opportunities exist because of the friction. The high pay isn't a reward for simply pushing a button on an AI interface. The high pay is a reward for solving complex, multi-layered business problems.
Right.
You are bridging the massive gap between a brand's desperate need for attention and the highly technical digital execution required to capture it.
You are becoming the architect of distribution. You are the toll bridge. But I have to push back here. I have to challenge this entire premise.
Let's hear it.
We are talking about the speed of AI. Artificial intelligence is advancing at a blistering exponential rate. OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, they are releasing models that are orders of magnitude smarter every few months.
They are.
Aren't all of these digital skills, video editing, ghostwriting, cold email outreach, going to be completely 100% automated in the next 5 to 10 years anyway?
Yeah.
Are we just advising the learner to trade one soon-to-be obsolete skill for another?
I mean,
Are we just moving deck chairs on the Titanic?
it is the defining existential question of our era. And depending on how you structure your career, the trajectory we are on suggests 3 distinct outcomes.
Okay, give me the worst-case scenario first.
Let's start with the worst-case scenario. This outcome will completely wipe out a massive portion of the digital workforce. It's the trap of shiny object syndrome.
Huh?
These are the individuals who constantly jump from trend to trend. 2 years ago, they were doing drop shipping, then they pivoted to the basic UI UX design, then they tried to be generic SEO writers, and now they're playing around with basic ChatGPT prompts.
Is chasing the hype.
They dabble. They never build deep, unreplicable domain expertise in any single area. Because their skills are entirely surface level, AI will not just compete with them, it will automate them out of existence almost immediately.
The dabblers are finished. If your entire value proposition is just correcting grammar or cutting out the silent pauses in a video, a free software tool already does your job faster and cheaper.
Exactly.
So what does the best case scenario look like? Who actually thrives in this environment?
The best case scenario belongs to a new class of professional, the hyper-leveraged single-person agency.
Single person.
Yes. These are individuals who merge supreme AI proficiency with deep, fundamentally human traits that algorithms cannot replicate. Complex human psychology, nuanced emotional storytelling, empathy, and sharp business strategy.
They combine the tech with the humanity.
They use AI as a force multiplier. 10 years ago, running a creative agency required a copywriter, a graphic designer, a video editor, and a data analyst.
A whole payroll.
Today, a single elite operator can use AI to execute the technical work of a 20-person team. But they provide the strategic vision. They retain all the profit, they operate with zero overhead, and they execute at lightning speed.
They become the CEO of an automated workforce. But let's be pragmatic. Not everyone listening wants to run a solo agency.
True.
What is the most realistic outcome for the average professional? The person who just wants to secure their family's future, whether they are a doctor, a corporate lawyer, a traditional mechanical engineer, or a university student preparing to enter the workforce. How does the learner protect themselves?
The most realistic and necessary adaptation for the average professional is recognizing that documenting has become just as vital as creating.
Documenting.
Regardless of your profession, building an online distribution channel and cultivating a personal brand is the ultimate non-negotiable hedge against corporate layoffs and AI disruption.
Let's explain why that is. Because a lot of traditional professionals hear personal brand and they roll their eyes. They think of influencers doing dances on TikTok. But that's not what we're talking about at all.
Not at all. We are talking about building verifiable digital authority. If you are a supply chain engineer and you consistently publish deep dive analyses on LinkedIn about global logistics bottlenecks, you are building an audience of peers, executives, and recruiters.
Right.
If people know who you are, if they trust your expertise, and if they follow your intellectual journey, you possess distribution. And in the future economy, visibility equates to opportunity.
It's an insurance policy. If you're a massive multinational corporation decides to lay off 10,000 middle managers tomorrow, and you are one of them, the person with zero digital footprints is throwing resumes into a black hole.
They are invisible.
But if you have an audience of 20,000 industry professionals who spent the last 2 years reading your insights and trusting your judgment, you aren't unemployed. You have immediate, incredible leverage.
You really do.
You can launch a consulting firm overnight, you can freelance, or you can have multiple competing job offers in your inbox by Tuesday.
Exactly. You de-risk your life by owning your audience rather than renting your security from a corporation. And if you want to know how fast this transition is happening, you have to watch the signals in the market.
What are the specific canaries in the coal mine that the learner should be watching right now?
Watch the legacy, ultra-conservative global brands. Startups always adopt new tech quickly, but that doesn't signal mass market shift.
Right. Startups are reckless.
When you see universally recognized, highly protective legacy brands, like the McDonald's example we discussed earlier, fully adopting AI-generated video content and synthetic storytelling for their prime-time global ad campaigns, that is the undeniable signal.
That's the tipping point.
It means the legal departments, the compliance officers, and the mass market consumer have all accepted AI-generated reality as standard. When that happens, the barrier to entry for solo creators entirely vanishes, and the old corporate structures of media, marketing, and agency work begin to permanently collapse.
It is a massive tectonic shift in how the global economy functions. And if you, the learner, want to stay ahead of these monumental changes, if you want to understand the invisible forces shaping your industry, your wealth, and your cognitive health before they blindside you, you should subscribe to the Deep Dive right now.
You can't afford to ignore it.
We are fiercely committed to keeping our finger on the pulse of these global trends, deciphering the noise, and bringing you the signal so you don't have to navigate this incredibly complex future alone.
The landscape is shifting with unprecedented velocity, but the foundational mechanics, human psychology, biological realities, and the principles of adaptation, they remain the absolute same. Master the foundation, and you master the shift.
So let's synthesize this incredible, sprawling journey we've been on today. We started by looking deep under the hood of the human brain. We deconstructed the biological reality of the hippocampus, exploring exactly why treating the brain like a hard drive for rote memorization fails, while pattern recognition and building neural scaffolding thrives.
Right.
We looked at the tragic biological cost of toxic academic pressure cookers and how chronic stress literally shrinks the memory centers of the brain.
We then moved from the biological to the practical. We outlined how to build unbreakable defensive productivity systems.
Systems over motivation.
We detailed the neurobiology of ultradian sprints, the precision of the nappuccino in clearing adenosine receptors, and the absolute necessity of dopamine loading to defend our focus against a digital environment engineered to distract us.
And finally, we took those sharpened cognitive tools and deployed them into the macroeconomy. We decoded the new attention economy. We established why the ability to write code is plunging in value, while human communication, AI storytelling, executive ghostwriting, and the psychology of distribution are skyrocketing.
It is a complete structural overhaul of how you approach your time, your brain, and your economic output.
But I want to remind you, the learner, the person who sat with us through this entire deep dive, that acquiring knowledge without executing on it is just highbrow entertainment.
It's just trivia.
It is. The tools to build a highly lucrative, autonomous, and intellectually fulfilling life are all available to you right now. The defensive systems to protect your focus have been clearly mapped out. The sequence of wealth building is in front of you.
The blueprint is there.
The only variable left in this equation is whether you choose to implement them or whether you choose to go back to scrolling.
We've established definitively today that human attention is the single most valuable currency in the modern world. It has eclipsed oil, it has eclipsed data, and it has eclipsed traditional software code.
Absolute.
Every single time you open a screen, a transaction is taking place. Wealth and power are moving. The final, lingering question you have to ask yourself tomorrow morning when you wake up and reach for your phone is this: are you the one mining the gold, or are you the resource being mined?